You can kill me, but you will never destroy me. It takes strength to resist the dark side.
Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one.
Are you kidding? Why the hell should I wait for you?
I know what it's like to try and rebuild a life. I had a bad day too, once.
If you're having nightmares, then welcome to the club. My name's Subaru Natsuki, and I am the Knight of Amelia.
Right now, all I can give you is just death.
It wasn't for you in particular.
You fought 100 men because it's not in your nature to run away.
If you are feeling disheartened, that you are somehow not enough, set your heart ablaze.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to... I don't know, whatever the hell this is at this point. Basically, the weekend show where I go through a whole lot of anime episodes and talk about what I did and didn't like. This is Animated, and it is officially episode 100 of the show. And now, this format has not been the norm for the vast majority of this show. In fact, this is a fairly recent thing that I've started doing. I say fairly recent, but I would actually have to go check and, verify that. But either way. So I'm kind of realizing that there may be some, big changes coming up here. That's maybe the very last time you ever see that intro for the show ever play. Because StreamYard has decided that they want to up their prices for the plan, like almost double the price. And I don't feel like I want to pay that. So I may be moving over to Restream. And I do not know where I have the original copies of a lot of the clips that I use for this channel. So I may end up having to make a bunch of clips and stuff like that. Things might change, all that stuff. Either way, I've been working on a new intro for this. I've been procrastinating it for a while, and I've just now gotten around to actually taking it on because I kind of finally have an idea of where I want to go with this thing. It's one of those moments where, you sit there and you wait for the inspiration, or you just make your own inspiration and go for it. Either way. Normally, I would start with manga notes or something. Well, wait, holy shit. I actually have read a couple of things this week. I was going to say I haven't read much, but I actually did end up reading. I guess I'll talk briefly about the newest volume of the 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You. But that'll be a really brief thing, because the other thing that I've been reading is, the interviews with Monster Girls, and I figured I would save talking more about that until I got to the end of the series. But before we do that, hello to the questioners. I appreciate you being here. And Marcel, and thank you, yes. Thank you for the happy 100th. I'll be doing this for quite a bit longer, unfortunately, for all of you, but here we go. So, 100 Girlfriends. What happens in this latest volume? What was covered in this latest volume? I mean, I don't think really. There are a few volumes where they don't actually add a new girl to the cast, but in this one they did, and this is probably the one instance where I actually didn't really care for a new character. And that's because it's numbers girl, and it's not like, oh, she's good at math kind of numbers. No, she's just, I don't know, this whole gimmick around her is just not as interesting as some of the other ones. But we do get the problem girl date, where basically all of the weirder girls in the cast are lumped together for a day, and that's the drunk teacher, the MILF, and the masochist, all put together. So that's a thing. What else was in that volume that I actually enjoyed. Let's see. Go to chapters. We get the Kusari and Kendo girl team up in this one. So that was a thing that happened. But probably volume 15 is what this is. And we're kind of I don't know. I felt like this was one of the weaker entries in the series. And it can be like that sometimes. The author tends to be so zany and out there with some of their creations that it's not all of them are going to land. But that is what it is. Of course, I don't think any of y'all are really here to listen to me blubber on about manga in particular, because the big thing we've got to talk about tonight there we go. Okay. That's what I've been looking for. Is anime. And this is where we were left off as of last week. And I'm actually going to start this in a bit of a different order than I normally do, because there is something I do want to address really quickly. Since I don't have my camera on, I may as well just do this for the time being, because I guess that works. And you guys can see this a little bit better. So obviously I finally added Food Court to the list. And it's not like I'm going to talk about it, but I just wanted to put it on the list so that we actually had it in there. I've been meaning to do that. Didn't end up getting around to watching Bunny Girl Senpai again. And I am going to try and actually get that done before the end of the season. We still got a couple of weeks, okay? I still got a couple of weeks to do this. But really the big thing that I am looking at is Nukitashi. This is the one that I do want to talk about, because I don't know if I actually want to bother getting caught up on this, or whether I just want to drop it because I've had my fun and I don't really care anymore. Because I'm kind of feeling like I don't really want to catch up on this. It's just like the absurdity of it was fun, and it was one of those like ridiculous ecchi anime that you would find, but it's not something that I would particularly point to and be like, yeah, this is actually worth watching. This is actually fun. This is entertaining. It's just not my sort of thing. Not in general, anyway. So while I do feel like it isn't the worst thing out there, it's just not my thing. And I'm pretty sure after tonight, yeah, I don't really think I want to continue watching this one. And it has nothing particularly to do with, well, oh, the show is bad, or oh, this is like some horrible creation. It's just I'm not digging it. I don't feel like investing any more time with it. And if you do have fun with Nukitashi, congratulations. It's not really exactly my thing. When it comes to storytelling, I prefer some of the stuff that's more, to the top of the list here. But that said, let's get into it. So, Dandadan is the first thing on the list for the night, as always. So, in this episode, we are starting out the Kaiju arc, and that's going to introduce us to two characters, actually, and one we have already met. And I thought this was a really, really good introduction to the character of Kinta Sakuta. And the whole cold opening of inserting Kinta like retroactively into some of the older footage, I thought was really entertaining. There were some good laughs that I got out of it, and Kinta's character just being, generally cringe is something that I thought was funny. I actually haven't watched Our Last Crusade or The Rise of a New World. I hear a lot of people say that it's good, that it's worth watching. It's just that the production hasn't been consistent with it. Anyway, Dandadan. So I really like the music that they're using for this kaiju arc. I've found that particularly particularly good. Like the very dramatic sort of Godzilla kind of stuff. I'm sorry if you can hear the squeaking in my chair. I do need to he doesn't like Inukai's dog. He doesn't like Beihei Neko and now Nukitashi. I got news for you. What? Because I'm not permanently entranced by a show that like just sort of makes a bunch of sex jokes. Sure, whatever. But we got some good action sequences in this latest episode of Dandadan. That was nice to see. There was some comedy in there as well, with Quinta being a fucking doofus the whole time, chasing the enemy through rooms and all that, and everyone's like smashing up the apartment complex and all that, and Okarune's over there fucking ringing the doorbell to get in. We're getting a little bit more into like the science fiction stuff for this one. It's we had a big arc involving ghosts and cryptids and all that. Now we are talking about aliens again, so a little bit more tech and science fiction with this time around. And then, of course, with the dub, Bryce Papenbrook, who would be known for Eren Yeager and for why am I blanking? Inosuke, Inosuke from Demon Slayer. He is now the voice of Quinta, and if you heard this, it's a very, very weird voice, but I think it's pretty fitting for the character. I kind of want to go back and see the dub and see the sub and how they did it, but hello, JM the Elite Fan. Where do you rank Ruri Rocks so far? Well, we'll get to that. Because there's a lot of good things. At the very least, I would say Ruri Rocks is a very good anime. A lot of good fan service shots, especially with Nagi. Oh, you should see my collection of Nagi fan art that I've been building up. It's my most anticipated one yet. Dandadan stole half an episode from me. We saw the same thing we did in season 1, just with one cringe dude added. I don't mind that. I thought it was funny. I enjoyed that part of the show. But to each his own. Either way, I really enjoyed this latest episode of Dandadan. I have consistently thought it has been a brilliant adaptation of the source material, and I've actually been rewatching it because we do have the Fictionology coming up, and a couple of friends over at the Rolla Rome cast have been watching it for their Patreon, so I joined them for that for a couple of sessions with season 1 here. I still think probably the highlight of season 2 was the Hayashi performance. I thought that was brilliant. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to do this whole kaiju fight, because there are some interesting things that will happen here. But there are 2 episodes left, I believe, so things could be about to get interesting. Okay, so with that out of the way, we are now moving on to My Dress Up Darling, one of the episodes that I had highly anticipated out of this week. And I will say I'm a little bit disappointed to see that they actually did censor things, because I'll get into the episode first and talk about what actually happened. So this is the second part of the all-nighter Gojo is pulling in order to play through the game Coffin at Marin's house. And now, if you remember from last week, what happened was that Maureen is under the impression that Gojo is like, DTF. Like the dude is raring to go. He's buying protection and all that stuff. That's not what happened. He was buying energy drinks. So she is like mentally trying to prepare herself and everything and like getting ready and like, so there's the scene where she gets out of the bath and goes to change. In the manga, they show a lot more. Particularly, they actually have her tits hanging out in that scene. In the anime, they cover it up. They do not show that. And now, from what I've seen, that's actually pretty similar to what happened during that particular scene with Juju later, early on in season 1, where he accidentally walks in on her while she is, changing in the bathroom and everything. Apparently, that's a little bit more uncensored in the manga, and I would have to go double check that. I didn't get around to it this time. Either way, the issue with it being quote unquote censored aside, I still did enjoy this episode. The all-nighter thing was done really well. I thought that the anime has covered it pretty well. They did a really good job at adapting like just about everything else in that one. And of course, we have the whole thing with just like Maureen freaking out and being like really, really anxious about it, and then getting really disappointed when she realizes that Gojo didn't do anything to her that night. Even though there were times where she definitely thought that he was, ready. So that was a nice little part to all this, but in all of that, we do get, Maureen's inner conflict, where one, she really likes this guy, and she is, outright expressing that. But at the same time, she's terrified at the fact that he's never really reacted well to it. And she doesn't want to get, friend zoned or anything. So it makes her incredibly nervous around making any sort of advances herself. Typical awkward teenage first love kind of stuff. And one other point of praise that I do have for this episode is just the lore that is established around the video games. And one thing I do want to praise, because I've actually like done a little bit of this for myself. Like I do a little bit of like fiction writing and stuff like that. And I kind of want to get, like I've said this before, I kind of want to get back to writing some of it and like publishing it so people can see it. But I don't know how to go about that. And I'm a terrible procrastinator. This is a huge issue for me. Either way. With My Dress Up Darling, the creator does a really good job of actually making the video games that or like the series that they're cosplaying feel like proper series. Like they actually have a level of thought and production to them in this world that is unusual and actually somewhat difficult to create. For just like creating fiction inside of fiction is a little bit more of a tricky issue. It's not exactly the easiest thing to pull yourself out of the mindset of one thing that you're writing and like try to write something in that same world that ties into everything else that is completely fiction. It may seem like it's a fairly easy thing to do, but from experience, I can say it's not exactly something that most people who would write would consider a priority. And I respect that the creator of My Dress Up Darling does a really good job at making all of these series that they're cosplaying seem like they could actually be real things. And perhaps this is all inspired by things that they have gone through them, and not gone through, things that they have played or watched or read themselves. That could be one thing, but particularly with Coffin in this episode, it actually felt like there was a real game there, and it was all centered around like this experience that Gojo had, and it all felt very realistic, very believable with how that fictional piece of horror media was created and Gojo's reception to it and his Okay. This shit again. I thought I fixed this. Unfortunately, I am still having this problem, even though I thought I had done something about this. I do have a quick fix here that I will apply and get back to this. And hopefully get back in there. I do want to know where we were when I suddenly cut out, because I just wrapped up My Dress Up Darling. I was talking about the video game worlds and all of that. So whatever the last thing that we heard was. There we go. Now I'm back on my normal mic. Present, share screen. I am terribly sorry, everyone. For whatever reason, this is just, it does not like to behave well for me. So, yeah, about the coffin game. Basically, what I was saying is there's a lot of effort put into what goes on with the coffin game that I really respect. I think it might not have been like a unnecessary detail, but the fact that it was adds a whole other level to the story, because now you're actually experiencing the fiction that they're cosplaying right alongside the characters. It's a nice touch. And that was the end of my thoughts on My Dress Up Darling, which would move us on to Secrets of the Silent Witch, if it weren't a fucking recap episode. And that's one of the big things that I was disappointed with this week. It was a 9.5, and I didn't even bother to watch it because 0.5 episodes are almost always fucking awful because they're wastes of time. And that basically means that we're going to be skipping this one tonight, but it is creating the perfect storm to move on into talking about why Clevites is now back at the number 3 spot for the season. Because holy crap, was that an episode? That was one hell of an episode of Clevites. You weren't lying. I believe it was you, Marcel, when you said that this was probably the best episode of the season, or of its season. One of the best anyway. It was a really good episode. It genuinely was. There's a lot that goes down in this that completely redeems everything that happened in the last episode, like the things that I complained about in the last episode. So, let's talk about it. This time around, we get Drell's story and how he came to be who he was. And we also get how he knew Alicia's family or father, their hunt for a dragon. Okay, so that was really good. We got some backstory into, Drell's title, where he got all his power and everything, and the legend of the sword master that was Alicia's father. Cool. All that's pretty great. But in this, we also start to learn a couple of very, very interesting things about this world. So I had talked about previously how this was a world that was just discovering magic and all of that. No, this is a world where magic had basically been erased from, public knowledge, which changes things because there are some things that happen in here that were really what the fuck moments. So we do see one of the other Dark Beast lords, the Lord of the Dragons in this one, and it seems like he killed and resurrected Drell is what I got out of it. The Headless King, though, that was something else. The fact that the guy's not dead. And he is now showing Clevitas exactly what the hell is going on with the Forge. And they're about to just fucking huck Luna in there. Like, excuse me? And this whole episode was pretty much like a massive a massive shakeup for this whole narrative. And it calls into question a bunch of other things that are happening within this story. So, I mean, ending with Clevitas basically just being like, yeah, he's going to throw the child into the furnace. I'm assuming then that this whole project is the king basically feeding his own offspring into this furnace to increase its magical power to make increasingly powerful magic weapons. Which makes this whole thing incredibly dark. Like, very, very dark. But you know what? I dig it. Oh, Biggles with the member message. Congrats on 100s. Thank you, Biggles. I appreciate it. And for that, we're going to go with it. And of course, okay, we're going again. Biggles, Matt's gifted 5 Crimson Law memberships. Again, I appreciate. And those went to Biggles Mets, Kami Anime, Daimyo, Mint, and King David Beast 82. I appreciate it. I really do. Sorry if I don't sound as enthusiastic as I normally do, but I do appreciate it. Yes, the King and Luna. That was quite the interesting thing. Either way, it was probably one of the big highlights for the it is one of the big highlights for the week. That's just a fantastic episode. And it is, again, the number 3 show for the season with how well it's done all of this stuff, with how it did this. It also lucked out that Silent Witch didn't have an episode this week. So there really was no, like, competition for anything there. Oh, your other account got one? There's Biggles Mets, and then there's Biggles _ Mets. Yeah, okay. So yeah, Secret of the Silent Witch. Nothing going on with that one. Sword of the Demon Hunter. So this one's an interesting one. This is one where, like, I genuinely thought the story was, like, really, really good for this one. And effectively, this episode is an entire, like, parting of ways with Genya and Ofu going their separate ways, both making the offer for the other person to choose their own way of life, because neither of them really wants to, give up the life that they are, pursuing, but they also enjoy each other's company. So Ofu makes the basically says, "Will you consider taking over the noodle shop?" And Genya is basically just like, "No, would you consider traveling with me?" And she says no, and they part ways on that note. It was kind of a really, like, I don't know, sad departure for the two. But overall, it was a really good story. We did get the background for the big guy, and how he became a demon, like a proper demon. And we do see that the samurai guy who's been doing all of the shady stuff in the background finally laying out his actual intentions and what he had planned to do. And this does feel like, narratively, it feels like this is going to be like a transition between eras. Like, we're going to see a bit of a time jump after this one. I don't know if it'll go all the way to the modern age or not, but I feel like in this case, we're probably looking at them going forward a little bit. Probably a couple of years. We may get to a new technological era in this one, because that's kind of what it felt like to me. But then again, it's not like my predictions are 100% accurate, so take that with a grain of salt. Either way, the big notable thing that happens in this episode is the animation remains incomplete upon release. Now, okay, collect my thoughts. So now what you normally see when people are animating for backgrounds and stuff is they will get a render. Ooh, this is interesting. I wonder if I get the Blu-rays, if it'll actually have the complete episode. That'll be an interesting thing to see. Either way, the one I watched, it had it was incomplete. Now, normally what you see is you'll get a render of a background or something. Basically, they'll put in an asset, and then they will draw over it and do all the detail works and everything like that. A lot of the stuff that was put in like the second half of this episode was not completed. Backgrounds were not completed. Now the characters, fine, they did that all right, but it was very noticeable when the animation was not complete for the backgrounds. And that alone, like this show didn't really impress me with its animation. I thought that it was pretty meh when it came to animation anyway. So I've always been watching this for the story, and the story payoff was good. It's just it was an incomplete episode. And while this normally would have the story normally would have merited it, maybe moving up in the wake of, a recap episode from The Secrets of the Silent Witch. In the case of Sword of the Demon Hunter, that animation issue does actually present a problem. So it's staying right there. That is exactly where we are going to leave it. Probably could have been better. And this is a show that honestly would be phenomenal, like truly like stand out spectacular if its animation were much better. But it does suffer in that department. So next on the list, Call of the Night. And now this is one that has just been consistently good across this entire season. Like no flaws in this one whatsoever across this entire season. Like once it gets going into what it's been doing, it's just fantastic. So this latest episode for Call of the Night, we get the confrontation between Nazuna and Kyoko. Kyoko Majora, or the detective. We'll just call her the detective. And this in and of itself is really well written and well animated. Just this whole confrontation, I thought it was entertaining, even though I find it really hard to believe that she would be able to, react that easily to someone charging her at superhuman speeds. But I'll let it pass because this is already a bit fantastical. So do what you will. Animation for this one was really good, like I said. And of course, we do start to sort of learn a little bit about what the detective's plan was in all of this and how she was planning to get herself killed in hopes that maybe it would expose, the vampires to the world and it would keep people from going out at night, which would ultimately starve the vampires. So this whole thing was basically a trap, kind of like we thought it would be, but not exactly the trap that I expected. Very well thought out trap, one that was completely in line with everything we knew about the vampires. So I actually like the way that the author didn't just come up with another piece of bullshit vampire weakness to exploit, and instead actually had the detective come up with a logical plan in that situation. That was really cool. I applaud that level of writing. Yeah, it was a little overkill how she was able to dodge Nazuna. Then again, Nazuna didn't really want to kill her. It is also a great episode. It's one of the better episodes this week. Like, I would probably put it up there with like top 3 episodes for this week. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Clevites and Call of the Night probably had the best episodes this week. Either way, a lot of really good stuff, and just like, you know, the rift that is there between Nazuna and her old friend and all of that, and just like the insanity of it all. And in the end, she goes to like off herself, and that results in a bit of a wrestle with Ko, and he gets shot at the very end of the episode. Like, there's this whole episode was just insane. So I'm really glad that I actually went through and watched Call of the Night, because this whole thing has been something else. Like, I'm really happy with how this series has turned out. It's just been so good. You aren't the only person who was, you know, bugging me. Oh, I am waiting to binge it. Yeah, Call of the Night was a really good show. With that said, though, that brings us on to Gachiakuta. And not really like anything super important happened. Well, I shouldn't say not anything super important. Nothing like major really happens in this episode of Gachiakuta. We do effectively learn how Rudo's powers work. And we learn a little bit about what the series is, the Watchmen series, where his gloves come from. So those things are cool. We basically see that Rudo's power is the ability to draw out an object's, you know, full potential, but it destroys that object in the process, which is why he's allowed to have multiple special objects. Why am I completely blanking on the name? Vital instrument. He's allowed to use multiple vital instruments. There we go. Of course, we do get the whole fake out with, you know, Griss's death. I thought that was kind of funny, where like they do a really good job of like selling you on Griss like actually dying. And then of course they just like come back at you like, yeah, he's alive. He's okay. Don't worry about it. We get introduced to a couple of the other cleaners, like the healer girl and the dude with the fucking pacifier and all that. And one of the big comedic moments is, you know, Rudo's sweets obsession and everything, how he starts, you know, like just absolutely chowing down on a bunch of stuff. Another point of this show that I do want to note is the fact that okay, let me start this again. I like the fact that it did that this show has taken its time to go through and actually like have these sort of like slower moments to it. Because I feel like when it comes to making these sorts of payoffs, like with big action and all that, these slower, more developmental moments are entirely necessary. And that is why I think what's going on with Call of the Night is such a phenomenal thing. It spends an entire season laying the groundwork for the second season to come in and, you know, have this whole massive conflict. It's brilliant. It's really, really well written. Like, genuinely, it is fantastically written. With Gachi Akuta, I like this slower pacing because it does such a good job of just like getting you like invested in the characters, like interested in the world, like keeping up with everything that's going on, and doing a good job of keeping you abreast of all the developments. Of course, we have now been introduced to, you know, the boss in both the Raiders and the Cleaners. So I thought the Cleaners was cool, but the boss of the Raiders, because I've been watching the English dub for this one, is Ian Sinclair, one of my favorite English voice actors. I really like Ian Sinclair. So I was excited about that. All in all, I don't think there's anything like huge to go on with this, but we do see a little bit like the big point out of this is Rudo's powers, particularly, as well as we get like a name drop for the Watchmen series. So now that we get a little bit of an explanation as to what Jabber was talking about. Oh shit, I almost forgot. We learn a little bit more about like the sphere stuff. That's another thing that happens in this one. I almost forgot about this because it's been almost a week since I watched this. And I'm sorry if you're hearing my chair squeaking in the background. Again, I can't help it. Every time I shift, it squeaks. Yeah. We learn that apparently someone is out in the wastes, whatever, just watching people go up and down from the sphere. So we learn a little bit of the legend and all of that. So like that's a cool little touch of world building. It also gives a good point of, you know, conflict where Rudo is going to have to go through the Raiders in order to get what he wants, insofar as, you know, the sphere and everything. So I like how they're tying all that stuff together. Again, slower pacing is something that I enjoy. A story that sets up for a long haul very well is something that I think is much better than like a really fast-paced, like high-octane story. Not that they're bad, it's just I prefer the former over the latter. But gotcha. Unfortunately, I didn't see any episode of The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity this week. So I can't really comment on that, which brings us to the last one in the must-watch category, which would be Dealing with the Mikadono Sisters is a Breeze. And now this was kind of an awkward episode, to be entirely honest. I couldn't really get a feel for like how they were doing all of this. Because it's Miwa's title matches, so she is defending her title as a shogi champion. And it kind of like gives you like this sense of like, oh, is she actually going to make it through this or not? How is this going to go? I couldn't really get a handle of like what the vibe was for this one. Of course, we do have the meeting with Miwa's supposed rival, and like the mediocre girl who, you know, Yu runs into, and she basically gets all pissed off at him for, you know, like, why would you accept just being mediocre and everything? Like, all you do is chores and like all this stuff. And he's like, well, I enjoy these kinds of things. And she's just like, I would never accept that. An interesting character and almost a very like different take on Yu as a character, in how like she is someone who isn't naturally gifted, but straight up just puts the effort in to actually get there. And of course, it wouldn't be the show without more of the, you know, familial closeness and all that. With all of with the other two sisters, you know, leaving their gifts at Miwa's door to encourage her on during during the basically it's a shogi competition. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with shogi culture enough in order to fully comment on it, but it was a good episode. I did enjoy it. It was a little bit more focused on Miwa as a character, who is, I don't know, second best girl if you ask me. But I don't hate it. There were some funny things that happened here. I'm curious to see how this whole chess thing is going to resolve itself, if this is going to be one of those things where like she falters a little bit or something on that, but I doubt that would be in keeping with the themes of the story so far. So we'll see how all of this goes. That said, we are moving on to Witch Watch. And now this was an episode. So the two big gags that we're dealing with in this one are Moi's birthday and the little world thing. So Nico basically has this fantasy about becoming super duper tiny and, eating a donut, which I've never once in my life thought about. It's just such a like very specific fantasy. But hey, it was funny. It was mostly funny to me because it's basically just Nico's fantasy going absolutely wrong. And I think the kicker for it was like they had this whole like traumatic experience involving like a donut. And then at the very end, the friend is just like, you know what makes everyone's days better? A donut. Here, have one. It was great. I did genuinely enjoy that. It was a bunch of like Honey I Shrunk the Kids sort of shenanigans, but really the thing that I thought was even that I enjoyed more was the bad luck thing. I actually thought the whole bad luck thing was pretty funny, where it's Moe's birthday and Nico decides that she is going to give him like a bout of good luck, but instead accidentally uses a spell that gives him bad luck. So he goes out thinking he has good luck and everything, and they're like watching the whole time to see how things are going to go. And like all these quote unquote like minor misfortunes are happening to him, and Moe is just like, wow, that's a great thing. Like, this is awesome. This is great. Like the stains on his clothes and everything. He's just like, this adds value for collectors, and I enjoyed that part. It was kind of funny how they ended that one off with his picture in the magazine basically being a meh picture, and he's just sitting there like, why did they go with this one of all things? This was one of the better episodes of Witch Watch. It had better comedy. So, can't really say that it advanced any like major story beats in this episode, so I guess there's that. But it did do it was a good comedy episode, and it was kind of nice to just, not worry about too much. Kaiju number 8 would be the next on the list, though. So we get the end to Reno's whole thing that happens. Sorry, distracted. We get the end of Reno's battle with the Honju. So I actually thought that that was pretty well animated. I will praise that part of it. It was cool to see Iharu and Reno get along together and, you know, have their abilities sort of highlighted in this, with Iharu being the person who sort of unleashes and bursts, and Reno getting a hold of the number 6 suit. So those parts were pretty cool. We also get Ian Sinclair's character in this and a little bit of his backstory and why he is the way he is. I thought that was a nice touch, but really the big thing that I thought was interesting is Kafka training with the vice captain. That was a nice that was something I knew was coming, but I always thought that this was going to be cool with the two of them working together. So Kafka's learning how to actually, you know, fight properly. Cool. He can't really use weapons, so they're going to teach him some of the squadron style combat maneuvers for unarmed fighters, which is weird that they call them like squadron style. I don't know. It's just that one thing right there has always been like, why do you call it that way? Like, this is, this feels so weird. Either way, they were training at a shrine during this whole time, and in that at the end of that, we get the apparition. Basically, the apparition of a fallen warrior, someone who was fighting kaiju in the past, appears to Kafka. He's like, "What is that?" So I'm guessing this is going to tie into like how the series is going to end. We're going to get some like backstory about how like this is one of Kafka's ancestors or something. So like he comes from like a long line of like people who are like who fought kaiju or whatever, or he is the descendant of some like great hero from like an old era who fought a kaiju. We're probably going to get something like that, or it's just going to be like, you know, they all respect Kafka's dedication to fighting kaiju, and it'll be his power up at the end of the series or something like that. Either way, I'll be okay with it if it's a good payoff. Animation for this one has always been good. The action is always very satisfying. Normally when anime does guns and stuff, it isn't like all that interesting. This is one area when it comes to like guns and stuff that I think like live action actually does better than anime. Because I don't know, it feels a little bit more interesting when they're using like guns in live action than in an anime. And it's very rare for me to say that like I actually enjoy some of the stuff they do, because when it comes to this kind of stuff, guns usually feel like less spectacular, except for in very specific situations. Like Licorice Recoil, I actually did enjoy that, but like some of the Chain Soldier stuff that happened, I wasn't a huge fan of like the use of guns and shit. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna move on down the line to Ruri Rocks. And honestly, I think this latest episode of Ruri Rocks has convinced me. This on that note, do you know any anime that use gun fu, something like John Wick? I think the first thing that comes to mind in that sense is like Licorice Recoil. But I don't really know if you can call that gun fu. I just really like the gunplay that is in that show. It would be really cool to see like some like an anime do something very similar to like John Wick. I feel like they could do something really cool with that, but most of the time when guns are used in anime, it's pretty static, and that's one of the big reasons I have a problem with it overall. Anyway, Ruri Rocks. This latest episode has convinced me. This is a must-watch. It goes in the top category. It's a must-watch. So we get Ruri and Shoko, you know, teaming up to do their report and everything. So that's nice. They're kind of working on it. It's mostly Shoko because Ruri, you know, can't be bothered to actually, you know, put in some effort. Just kidding. She's just tired. She's all tuckered out. Aw, he's all tuckered out. So yeah, we get a whole like episode about like floods and dams and like how dams are like affect the environment and I'm getting there. I'm getting there, motherfucker. Hold your horses, okay? Anyway, so we get the like a good episode, like a genuinely good episode about like floods and dams and all that. We get the opal hunt, and Rory's able to find her massive amounts of opal that she was looking for. I liked all that. Like the animation for this just is really astounding overall. Like Bind does a great job in animating things really well that they otherwise wouldn't have needed to animate as well as they did. But of course, like Marcel said, I was never going to deny this. I was just going to save it for the end. It's Nagi's fashion show that makes this a must watch, to be entirely honest. All of the other qualities do suffice to make this a very, very good anime. I love the topic of it. I like a lot of the characters. I think there are some good like interpersonal messages there, particularly like with the relationships between all four of our characters so far. That stuff is really cool. Animation on this show is fantastic. It's entertaining. It's fun. I get a good laugh out of it sometimes. But, I mean, you can never go wrong with Nagi Arato. She's just... she is so good. And the maid outfit, it's great. But every one of the other outfits, just fantastic. Okay? Like... And that's the kind of, like, fan service that I genuinely enjoy. Call me weird for that, but like some of them like newer ecchi and stuff, like sure it's cool to, you know, like have like the uncensored stuff for like My Dress Up Darling and all that, but I prefer those sorts of things to be few and far between because it makes them more stand out. It means that it generally means that like they're just sort of accents to an already good show. And I've made this point before. You don't really need to hear me run through this again as to like why I generally care less about ecchi series that are largely focused on just sex the whole time. If I wanted that, I could go find some doujins that probably have better stories. Just saying. Better stories and better depictions of all that stuff. But in this case, really the must watch comes from just the fact that we got a really good bit of Nagi appreciation. And like I do not even get me started on the fan art collection I've been building of Nagi after this week with all the maid outfit art that has come out. And like I said, I actually recently saw the very first like just like in the wild Ruri Rocks doujin getting circulated. I'm sure there are probably going to be a few more to come. But it is what it is. Either way, really good episode. Just overall, the quality of this show has been absolutely fantastic. And this is one that I did not expect to be this freaking good. I expected to enjoy it, but I thought it was going to be one of those niche things where I'm like, oh, it's just the anime about rocks and I like it because it's about rocks. No, this is genuinely like high quality stuff. For whatever reason, this became like genuinely high quality stuff. There was one I saw. Kind of surprised that they are already out. Okay. That brings us down the list too. Betrothed to My Sister's Ex. So I have complicated feelings about this one tonight. So honestly, the whole breakup thing in this one was pretty obnoxious. I thought it was... I didn't I didn't really care for it. I kind of hated it. Either way, it was a good episode because I still have to praise it for at least it didn't drag this whole breakup thing out. It started it and finished it within one episode. If you're going to do this kind of stuff, doing it within an episode is the best bet because it doesn't drag it out. You get your satisfying payoff and you don't leave people with on a sour note at the end of an episode and make them wait a week. Great. I love that decision there. They get rid of, the last of Mary's bits of insecurity on all of this. She's still hung up on her sister and everything. And now she is finally committed to this whole relationship because she wants it. And there is no sort of inferiority complex interfering with her from doing so. And yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Is I'm okay with it because they were willing to solve it immediately, even if it was forced, even if it did feel like it was frustrating to see. But all of that is done. I do like that it, is a resolution. They finally worked out all of, Mary's problems with this relationship, and she's actually acknowledging that she loves this guy, she wants to spend the rest of his life with him, and it's not and she's not going to give this up. This is her place. She wants this. And it kind of looks like they were doing it there closer to the end of the episode. I feel like they do a pretty good job of just implying that that's what they were up to. I mean, why else would they be like? I mean, he's in a state of undress and they're sharing a bed. We also get a little bit of the Anastasia stuff resolved because we have, the jeweler, the button maker or whatever who comes in and is talking about his apprentice and everything. And we learn that he can't actually distinguish between people very well. We don't know anything. And they have this whole thing. And I'm guessing the reason that there is this attack, I'm going to make this kind of a prediction now. It seems like Anastasia might have lost her apprenticeship that she had under the button maker, because they put the notion in his head that the person that's working for him might actually be a girl, and so he went and actually confronted her about it, and that caused all the problem. Either way, at the very end we have Anastasia attacking Mary, and I'm really hoping that this doesn't turn into some sort of I've always hated you and everything sort of thing between the two sisters. Jeremy Turner. Hey man. I should probably say Jeremy Turner for the $10. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Seriously, it still boggles my mind that people would throw fucking money at me for this stuff. Either way, love it. Thank you. Hey man, got stuck at a wedding and can't stick around, but congrats on 100 episodes. Here's to more. Thank you, and we will definitely be continuing more. The questioner's got to go lay out my son. Go lay with my son. I read that as got to go lay out my son, so I will be heading out. Well, hopefully all goes well. Thank you for sticking around and hanging out, dude. I appreciate it. Have a good night, man. Okay. Either way, with this, we're getting to the end of this. It looks like it's going to be a one season and done kind of thing, and I really do like that. This is a good one season kind of show. I think it's a respectable thing to do. So that of course wraps up thoughts on that. I'm just hoping they don't do more sister drama or anything there. But Onmyo Kaiten would be the next one on the list. Okay, so last week I talked about how this got really, really good. This is one that would genuinely benefit from some like. This is another one where like you could have like or you could have a really standout anime if the animation was like on another level. Like if you had good animation for this show, it would pop off so much more because the story is there. And while I do think that some elements of it are a little hokey, like with the family sayings and all that, and while I do think some of the storytelling could be done better with a little bit slower pacing and a little bit more detailed given to like characters and the plot developments and all, it still has a lot of good things going for it. This latest episode, we basically get a breakdown of like Tsukimiya and the monster that is protecting her. The Great Time Bird or whatever. And how it has the power to eliminate timelines that pose a threat to it. Which is kind of a weird thing, but okay. The story in this one just wasn't as good as last week's, but I don't think that you can really like fully live up to those. I do think it's a good story. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, like, there are certain critiques I have of it that could make it less childish and a little bit more streamlined to me. And I feel like that would make an improvement upon it. There are certain elements of it, like I said, are hokey, but really its biggest struggle, the one that would most need attention, like if you could only fix one thing about the show, is the animation. If it had better animation, it would be a very, very good anime. And then, of course, those minor story tweaks would make it one of, would improve it even more. But its story is overall very, very good. There isn't a whole lot to adjust with that. Either way, it looks like Senmei and Takeru are going to do their whole team up thing. So that's going to be interesting to see how they're going to do this. Apparently, like, this is the last world or whatever that exists in this run. So it'll be interesting to see how all this goes. Tsukimiya being the villain in all of this was a very interesting thing. Like I said, it's kind of hard to live up to last week's episode, to last 2 weeks' episodes, because there's just some crazy stuff that happens in those. Some of it's fairly dark, like darker than I expected. And this is genuinely like a surprisingly good anime for the season. This is another one that I thought was going to be a throwaway. And it's going to be really hard for next season, because I was looking to live up to just how good summer has been this season, if you ask me, because a lot of these like smaller shows that I thought were just going to be throwaways turned out to be incredibly good. So this one was packed with anime that I thought was just fantastic. But yeah, Onmyo Kaiten, I'm only demoting just because, like, I don't know, I felt like this latest episode was probably one of its weakest. But or just in terms of like, that's a bad way of saying it, not one of its weakest. It just didn't feel like the best follow-up to everything that had happened last week. Either way, moving on down the line would be The Summer Hikaru Died. So this is an interesting one. I do genuinely enjoy the horror elements of this. Like, the supernatural stuff always intrigues me. So it's done that really, really well. Hikaru was on the chopping block today. I get it. This is one where like it could be much better if it was more focused on the supernatural stuff, and it has actually for the past couple of episodes been pretty focused on that. The homoerotic undertones, not really my favorite thing, just because I'm not a fan of BL. But so what? But we do learn some really cool stuff about this. So like we learn a little bit more about the curse god, who was basically acting as a lightning rod for all of the curses that would have, rained down upon the villages and everything. And we also learned that it was, the Indo family who was responsible for the situation and why they had to, perform that ritual. So we learn a little bit more about that. It is no longer as mysterious. It was basically the head of the Indo family would have to, go up the mountain and apologize for that. The big notable thing that happens here, though, is our inspector was able to use some of the spirits to track Hikaru down and is now confronting this so-called curse god. And this will be an interesting situation to see what's going on, because Hikaru is, incapable of, fighting back because he broke himself in half. So it kind of like makes the horror element a little bit better. I'm curious to see where the story goes from here. How many episodes does this have? The summer Hikaru died. Okay, they're saying 12 episodes. Interesting. I guess it remains to be seen whether this is going to be a short anime or a long one. Either way, I've enjoyed this show. I thought it was a pretty good episode, but I don't think that it is something that I would move up much beyond from here. That's just kind of how I feel about it. I want to see next week's episode and how all of this is going to resolve before we really, really get into anything crazy. Before I like cement my judgment of it, because we're getting close to that point. And by the way, to anyone who is here or whatever, I will be doing again the whole open mic thing that I did at the end of spring. I will be doing here at the end of September. We will be, opening up the discussion to, fans and everything, people who are regular chat members and all of that. So, and keep that in mind. It will be happening again, because we had a good time last time talking about all this anime and stuff and getting a bunch of people in here. Getting to talk to all of you guys was fun. So, Summer Hikaru died. That brings us on to Ugly Mug Epic Fighter. So, we get to the end of the little casino arc and everything that was going on here. So that was cool. But we're mostly moving on to like what Seiji and everyone is planning to do, and that like we get the whole like follow up with this weird like company. So like Shigeru is like hanging out with his former boss and everything at a new company in a fictional world. And this is a little bit of a a struggle for me, like a hard pill to swallow, because I don't know. I wasn't as much a fan of like what they decided to do. Okay. Man, people really don't like my my opinion on To Be Hero X. But hey, you can't win them all. So anyway, Ugly Mug Epic Fighter. This episode was significantly weaker than the last couple. The casino thing I really did enjoy. This new part of it, not so much. There are certain things that are anachronistic that I feel like just aren't there. It ends up being a little bit more goofy than anything. Not the huge fan of that. And of course, we have this whole like plan to resist Ordnance Spear and all that, which is cool and all that. But I don't know. I wasn't such a huge fan of what they did in this episode. There's just a lot of things like there were some like mildly interesting things that happened, but I feel like it's just kind of a okay, we're back down to the Mei Isekai sort of thing. Shy Hero and Assassin Princess is not the next one. To Be Hero X is the next one. We'll talk about that. Okay. So, To Be Hero X. And now, I do like this show. I think there are a lot of good things about it. It's just not perfectly to my taste, and there are certain things that I would have enjoyed that would have made me enjoy it more. And I don't think that really I don't think that like really is an unfair criticism of the show to say that like I would have preferred it like this, but it's still a really good show. And I gave the whole thing like I said this was like an 8.5 kind of series in my review, although I doubt a lot of people are listening in that far. They're probably just hearing me making jokes about everything and talking about like the parts that I am not a huge fan of and thinking, oh, this guy hates the show. How dare he? But that's another issue entirely. There are I do find the show enjoyable, and I do think it's pretty well written. It's just one of those things where like it's not perfectly to my taste. So let's get into it. We basically have the death of Smile in this latest episode. And Nice has his whole mental breakdown over everything that happens. But basically, Dragon Boy kind of gets what he wants. In that he instigates this whole fight. Smile gets infected with fear. And as far as Dragon Boy goes, fuck that little shit. He can honestly go fucking pound sand. I'm really upset that he didn't get beat up worse. I honestly was really hoping that X would just fucking thrash the dude thoroughly. But it was a really good fight. Like, it was interesting to see that whole thing, especially with how X's powers work. There's some, like, really weird stuff that goes on with that. It's kind of trippy, but at the same time, cool. But this has, of course, placed X now on the radar of the big guy. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Of course, big guy's trying to, make a god or whatever. I'm just like, I'm really confused as to where this plot is like going. Like, what are you trying to do with all of this? But I enjoy the superhero action and the creative powers that are involved in it. So there's that at least. Like it has some really cool like powers, like with Queen and with X. I think those are two really cool ways of doing things. A lot of it is just like super strength, flying, all that kind of stuff, and then you have a gimmick to it. Like Nice and Smile are effectively like the same thing. They're basically just like the Superman sort of like bruiser types, except for Nice is like the pretty boy and Smile is Smile. But when the series does get creative with powers, I think it actually make some pretty interesting ones. And I like that part of it. Honestly, would have been more interested if it had like picked a main character and focused on them the whole way through and introduced a lot of the other heroes as like side characters who sort of like come into the cast for certain parts of it alongside our main character. But I'm probably in the minority for that one. And yeah, Dragon Boy and Little Johnny, they're fucking shitters. We had to wait 22 episodes to see the name-giving hero in action. I don't think we will see more of him this season. Yeah, I disagree with how like this show was directed and like everything that was done with it. But it's by no means bad. Like it is genuinely an enjoyable series that I would actually recommend. It in contrast to what I thought earlier of the show, the fact that like I don't know, it was too disjointed and had characters that I just didn't really vibe with. That is still kind of my opinion, but overall, I think there's a little bit of something for everyone in here, and people are going to get different things out of it. Again, in the review, I said this was like an 8.5 kind of show. It's a good, though not generally my like type of anime that I would always want to watch. That brings us though to Yaiba, Samurai Legend. And this is one that I am actually demoting. And now I have enjoyed Yaiba over this last season and a half or so, the last 2 seasons. It started coming out in spring. But at this point, I'm kind of getting burned out on its particular brand of storytelling. We have now all the orbs now, so the crew has made it to Mount Fuji and gone down into the crater. They snuck through Onimaru's castle and were able to like jump down the trash chute and everything to reach the crater. And now they're taking on the challenge to get the dragon orb and all that. So that's cool. But it felt like they just sort of like very easily allow the characters to just go wherever they need to for plot convenience. And I'm not like really like a huge fan of that. So this show has been like its charm has sort of worn off. It does still have good animation, like good action sequences and everything every now and then. But its particular brand of storytelling doesn't keep me as interested in it as it did at the very beginning. It really did devolve into like that sort of early shonen silliness, which does have its place. I mean, that's how shonens basically got their start. That's what made the whole demographic. But as time has gone on and I have developed my own tastes more, I kind of feel less inclined towards these kinds of stories. So with Yaiba, we basically have a confrontation between Yaiba and Onimaru. They have the whole fight. They end up inside the castle. They escape through a trash chute and they go down into the temple. And the bird basically gets turned into fucking dinner because he gets trapped in a room with lava. So, well, wasn't terribly impressed with this latest episode of Yaiba, if you can't tell. That does move us along, though, to detectives these days are crazy. And of course, we get a swimsuit episode, so obvious like bonus points for swimsuit episode. So we have the whole like water park thing going on. It is solid fun. And that's why it goes in the interesting category. It's just it's I'm less interested in it now, but I still do enjoy watching it. I'm gonna at least finish the first season or whatever we're gonna get out of this. I'm committed at this point. I enjoyed enough to continue it. Detectives these days are crazy. So swimsuit episode, we get the girls in their swimsuits, so that's nice. We get, Mashiro and Maki doing their thing. The whole water park thing was really funny. It was kind of predictable though that the photographer was going to be a girl, because who else would be able to get into the girls' locker room? That just kind of made sense. I think the funniest part of that whole thing though was uh how Mashiro was glossed over, was just criminal. She looked great in her swimsuit with those massive arguments. Yeah, no, that was good. I was gonna say that was the funniest part of it to me, was the fact that like she is like just there and no one's paying attention to her or anything. Like she is getting like just completely overlooked. And at the very end, you get the fucking David Attenborough voiceover with like this female is attempting a courting ritual, but it seems that none of the young males are interested. She's all like pissed off that it's like a nature document and everything. I like that. And then of course we do get like the worst wedding of all time. Like the absolute worst wedding of all time. Like they have like the whole ceremony while a typhoon is going on, and like everyone is like struggling through it, and then it's just like all because everyone is fucking committed to this fucking bouquet toss and they're all fighting over it. And Maki ends up winning at the end. Good for her. Oh, I almost forgot with the swimsuit thing, how Mashiro shows up in like full scuba gear or whatever. Was that Mashiro, or was that the I'm pretty sure that was Mashiro who was in scuba gear. Yes, the whole ceremony there was just it was utterly ridiculous. This was another like just a good this is just a good comedy anime. And this is one that I almost skipped because I was like, no, I don't really feel like watching it. It looks kind of dumb. Really enjoyed it. Really thought it was good. Okay. So that brings us on to the interesting anime. And the first of which would be, where is Game Center Girl? Okay, so cultural exchange with a Game Center Girl. This is another one that I think I am going to end up demoting a little bit, because the age gap thing is kind of wearing on me. And I've said a lot of this earlier. I think I said this particularly on Biggles' show, The Breakdown, where I enjoy like the friendship thing with like Lily and like all of the other girls that she's like meeting through school and like getting along with and going to the game center with. I enjoy that part. But I'm not a huge fan of this sort of like weird romance it's pushing between a middle school girl and a college student. Like I've said, there are a lot of weird things that I can tolerate in fiction, but this just happens to be one of those things where it's really starting to get kind of meh to me, especially when you have Best Girl, the kendo chick in college who has a crush on Renji. Like, use her more. She is Best Girl. I mean, the dad, I did enjoy the dad showing up at the end of the birthday party, but the whole thing of just like this college age guy being at a middle school girl's birthday party, I don't know. I just kind of like, I didn't really care for that. So like, this show just kind of struggles in ways that like it doesn't need to, because it has all of the like way to get out of this. It just continues to make this sort of like weird thing. And I can go back to like Renji not saying, like when he first meets Lily's parents and everything, like Renji could have just gotten out of that awkward situation being like, yeah, she's my sister's friend. I go to she comes to the arcade that I work at all the time, and I just wanted to make sure that she got home properly and everything because she's my sister's friend. That's it. Leave it at that. Move along. But no, they need to make sure that there is no like shooting down of like the romance angle that they're going at for this. I don't know, man. It just it seems off. Ugh. Ugh. Of course, we do now need to talk about the other big titty lady of the season, and that is Goa with Shy Hero and Assassin Princess. And in this latest episode, we do get a lot of Goa's personal insecurities. Okay, so we get the whole conversation about monsters and men and everything. We like the Doulahan has the whole thing where he's traveling with a hero and all that because they get along. You learn that not all monsters are in line with the Demon King and everything. So there was that interesting little bit of world building, but I can largely just kind of overlook it. We do get like CL's talk with Toto, which was kind of nice. We get to see her, going and like talking about like, what would you do if this, and this, like, would you still care about us? Would we still be your friends and everything? And he's just like, yeah, you'd still be my friends. I still appreciate you people. But I mean, the big shock that comes in this episode is basically Goa is like going through a bit of like a mental breakdown in this, and she is like like sitting here like the only person who doesn't belong is me, like I'm the only one that can never be loved, like massive insecurities with this girl. So she starts acting all funny and goes into her funk, and then at the very end we get the oh no, did someone actually manage to kill Toto? Which, I mean, I don't think we can actually say that the dude is dead. That should be a fairly straightforward thing. But like, is this going to just be like an illusion, a dream, or something? Like, what's going on here? Like, how are we getting out of this one? Are we just going to get the, oh no, he's not dead quite yet. He's just like really close. Like, either way, quite a wild swing in this show, and it has me intrigued enough to sort of want to know where this is all going to go. All right. We can skip Game Center Girl. That brings us to Lord of Mysteries. Okay, so I don't think it's any secret that I've been pretty fairly harsh on Lord of Mysteries as of late. But I do think it ends on a very, very interesting note. Sorry, again, distracted. Okay. So yes, Lord of the Mysteries ended on a pretty good note, to be entirely honest. I watched the last 2 episodes together. So I have officially finished this up, and just for the fact that I did actually enjoy the ending and how it like played all this stuff out, I'll give it the very good rating. I'll put it up there. I think that this show was one that probably could have done better with its first half. But it does recover after that point and get a bit better. I feel like it would have alleviated a lot of the confusion around what exactly was going on with this show if Tencent had allowed this whole thing to be a better production of those first and like initial chapters and everything, slow rolled it a little bit and not tried to push for the clown fight in the first, I don't know how many episodes, 3. Because I can see how this whole thing was pretty well done. And I can see like a lot of like the plot threads that were woven into this story, and it genuinely intrigues me how intricate it would have been put together if this thing had been a decent adaptation of what was going on. But that said, I mean, overall, these last 2 episodes were pretty fantastic. They were largely action heavy, and we actually do have some kind of heavy hitting deaths and everything. I thought the whole thing involving Klein at the end here and how he is basically, faked his own death and all of that was pretty cool. I thought there was a good character moment there for him and everything, like particularly surrounding like his family and everything and all the stuff that he's going to now have to do because of it. But again, most of my criticisms are for the early parts of this series. So would I watch a season 2? Maybe. I might get back into this if season 2 comes out. Hopefully things are a little bit better. I do kind of want to check out the original a little bit more. What's next on the list? We're not covering city, so I guess that puts us at Sakamoto Days. Oh, we only have like 4 left here. Cool. All right. So just to wrap it up, I'm more favorable on Lord of Mysteries now that I've actually finished it than when I was watching it. I feel like this is a show that I don't know. The fans are pretentious and they don't do it any favors. It got massively overhyped, if you ask me, and Tencent did a lot of damage to it with how they decided to force the direction of it. But still a good show that I think is worth checking out to see if you yourself would enjoy it. It would be one where I would basically, I would need to know someone's taste before recommending it. So let's talk about Sakamoto Days. So we have the whole like slur infiltration thing and the Sakamoto fangirl thing happening and all of this. Oh, this is another one where like along with Yaiba, I feel like the zaniness of it, the whimsical part of it is just not as it doesn't mesh with this. It's very like contradictory to have a story about like assassins killing each other and like have this like very serious sort of like dark world that it builds, and then everyone has these like goofy ass sort of like gimmicks that they're going for as an assassin. It all just, I don't know, it feels like a very like badly shonenized assassin story. It can't decide what it wants to be. Either way, we get, fangirl doing her thing in this episode. Also, hello to Muffler Tape. And she has her whole fight with Shin and everything. And like, the whole like I'm the number one fan sort of bullshit. We learn a little bit more about Akira as a character and who she was related to and why she wants to become an assassin. And then we have the whole slur thing with the remote control part of it. So like the action sequences are cool. Like it's good for action and all of that, but like I can't with the story or the setting, dude. It just doesn't do it for me. Like I guess I'm just like incredibly pretentious about what I watch and what I like. I will acknowledge that. And some of my criticisms may be pretty like wild, but when it comes to like issues of entertainment, it's really taste, and this doesn't fit my taste as much as for some other people. So with Sakamoto Days, I'm just kind of like whatever on it. It entertains me during days where there isn't much anime coming out, but that's about it. The next on the list, as we move to wrap this up, would be New Saga. So basically, we get into this whole thing with the demons. I caught up on this finally. And what we learn is basically this whole region is being manipulated by demons. There's this deal going on between the governor and the demons. The governor wants to be independent. He doesn't want to be subject to other authorities. So he is trying to break away from everything. Theron is obsessed with looting a national treasure and getting the holy sword Rand or whatever. And he finally gets his hands on it, and now they're going into a full duel. And we do learn that our like Dami Mommy secretary chick is lovers with the dwarf guy. So this is a show that had potential, but kind of just like the more you watch it, the less you're interested in it. Pretty similar to some of the other things that I have said tonight. I wish I could say that I enjoy watching this, but it's just kind of there. I'm committed to seeing how this season goes, and that's about it. Probably would have fared a little bit better if it didn't have to compete with like a bazillion anime that turned out to be like way better than anything I had expected, and a bunch that I'd already expected to be good and turned out really well. The Water Magician would be next. And Rio takes a trip with some friends back to one of their villages. He meets a talking wolf who recognizes Rio's armor and like his connection to the Fairy King and all that. They fight some skeletons and all that to clear a fucking shrine. And I don't know why I'm still recapping this one, because I don't think anyone is really super invested in this. It's one of those shows where like you kind of watch it because it's there. Like there are some like entertaining parts of it, but this is by no means one that I would ever recommend. And I see like I saw someone write a whole article about how like this could be like the next greatest isekai. No, it will not be the next greatest isekai. This doesn't even, approach a fucking B tier at this point. This is a C tier isekai. One that uses a lot of tropes that doesn't do them very well. And just like the animation, the fights, everything, it's all just kind of... This was a throwaway production. Anti-Roman. Who's Anti-Roman? I don't know anyone named Anti-Roman. Either way, how you doing? How you doing, Roman? How you feeling? You all caught up on Dandadan now? You guys finally get through that? So yeah, Water Magician really just comes off as a very terribly bland anime to me. It doesn't do anything particularly special. Whatever it like did have going, well, I shouldn't say it doesn't do anything actually, because I did praise the eclipse scene. I thought the eclipse was really, really good. But that was about it. We got 3 episodes. Nice. But that was about it. Everything else has been just kind of a slog for this show. And that's why it's only in the okay category. I can't really move it down because it doesn't go in the I don't know. The only thing I can go from here is just. Okay. So that brings us to the last anime of the night, the I don't know category. The one where I watch it because I can't look away. Reborn as a vending machine. Oh, okay. Finally at the end. We're getting out of here. Oh, okay. So Reborn as a vending machine, we get the beauty pageant episode because that's a thing we got to do. So we have Huh? Yes, this anime is literally called Reborn as a Vending Machine. Oh, and by the way, this is the second season. So we get the beauty pageant episode where we have our three girls, joining in on this whole thing as like everyone is like under stress and like dealing with like this massive like invasion basically. And they're all just like, let's throw a beauty pageant and have some of our best fighters take part in it. So they basically get everyone riled up. They ask Boxo for a bunch of help with like the beauty stuff. So he gives them a bunch of like fashion magazines and makeup and shit. And then at the very end of the episode, the fucking foot priest comes across some legendary boots and gets really angry and decides to fuck off to some other level of the dungeon on his own. He seems really tense, like really irritated about the whole thing. Either way, like, I don't know. The beauty pageant doesn't really do anything good. It basically just gives you some like mediocre outfit changes. Like Lamas puts on more clothes. They dress Hulumi up in a sailor uniform and they put Shui in a fucking pair of gym shorts and a t-shirt. I don't know why I do this to myself. This show it's one of those shows where like everything about it screams like I should throw this aside and stop watching it, but at the same time I can't look away because it's so just I can't look away. I don't know why. I every time I'm like, yeah, whatever. Reborn as a vending machine. Okay. I find myself like inexplicably clicking on that and watching the episode and being like, huh, why am I doing this? Huh. Reborn as a vending machine is just one of those anime where like you know what you're getting into because it's ridiculous. But this is basically the end of the night. This is where we are for anime rankings for the season. I need to not that. I need to do this and get a screenshot of this so that I have this as a marker for next week. And now I can begin to wrap it up. There we go. Make this a full screen. So, like I said, what the fuck, dude? I don't want to think about that. I really don't. Nasty. Okay. Wrapping up tonight. So like I said, tonight may be the very last time you hear the old animated intro. I've been working on a new one, so hopefully I can get that done. I don't know how many of the clips that I'm going to be able to transfer over to restream, because I don't know where I have the originals for them. But a lot, I'm going to be transitioning over because I have 6 days now left on my StreamYards or my StreamYard subscription, and I am not going to pay double the fucking price for the same thing that I've got. So with that said, I hope you will, bear with me for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try and get a lot of things figured out. You know how life is. It comes at you fast and hard. And I hope you all enjoyed. I am going to go, deal with people in the comments of my latest video about To Be Hero X, because apparently some people don't understand the fucking jokes that I made, and they take it a little too seriously. But that being said, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a good one. Thank you for everyone who tuned in and watched this. And thank you especially to people who donated, who gifted subs, who are members. I appreciate it. What clip should you know what? Hold on, let me change the clip. What should we go with? How about we do, it's been a little while, I think, since we did free run. Let's go with free run. Let's have free run take us out. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.